The Republic of Ireland was the first European Union member to call for Palestinian statehood back in 1980, and public support for Palestinians remains extremely high. Irish solidarity was also on display today as the Northern Irish rapper Mo Chara from the group Kneecap was greeted by crowds of supporters waving Irish and Palestinian flags as he faced court again on terrorism charges. So why is Ireland considered one of the most pro-Palestinian nations, especially in the Western world? Liam Tunney is a journalist with the Belfast Telegraph and he joins me now. Liam, good to have you with us today. How do you explain the groundswell of support for Palestinians more recently in Ireland and where you are there in Northern Ireland?
I think this is something that has always been present in Ireland. As you mentioned there, it goes back to there 1980 when it was recognised. Particularly on the nationalist side within the north here, it's something that has been, I suppose, championed by nationalist parties over the last number of decades. They would always have kind of encouraged that. I suppose what they will say, it goes back to a kind of shared sense of maybe persecution, where the nationalists here will feel that same kind of persecution was visited on them. So they have that kind of empathy in some ways with a people facing this kind of thing. Of course, then on the other side, many unionists would argue that's not the case, that they would maybe throw their support in with the Israeli side. And you see that territorially within Northern Ireland, within Belfast, there are flags up all over the place. You have the Israeli flags and Palestinian flags flying throughout the north here. So it's a conflict that is, there's a lot of interest in it here, and it almost kind of is a pseudo continuation of the conflict that was here for decades, where you have unionists primarily in support of the Israeli position and nationalists in support of the Palestinian position.
Yes, and can you tell us, how have these divisions manifested themselves in the streets in recent weeks and months?
I suppose that there's been plenty of protests in solidarity with the Palestinians, and in some cases they attract maybe counter demos of people who are maybe against that. A lot of the time it maybe comes down to pseudo protests. Really, you have almost a right wing, left wing split there. So it does sometimes come down on community lines, but there's a bit more nuance there when it comes to the likes of Palestine and Israel, because you have that, but you also have going on at the minute the kind of immigration debates, where people are either in favour of having immigrants there or who aren't in favour, and you have that kind of debate going on as well, which takes the sides kind of broadly of the Israeli-Palestinian debate at the moment.
Yes, and of course Irish politicians have been quite outspoken in their backing of Palestine as well and statehood. What have they said more recently about the situation in Gaza, given so much has even been happening, in the past 24 hours?
Yeah, I mean, that support has kind of stayed steady throughout. I mean, that would have intensified after the attacks from Hamas, but that kind of brought that conflict maybe more into public consciousness than it had previously been, and that's intensified feeling on both sides. And politicians, particularly in the south, have been very strong in their condemnation of what's going on. And in the north, then that reflects, obviously, on the nationalist side would be maybe more vociferous than that. On the unionist side, you have some people supporting the Israeli position. So it's something that has always been there, kind of below the surface, but over the last number of months and years, that's really intensified, just given what we've had. And I mean, the Mo Chara Kneecap case at the minute is almost an outworking of that, where you have that support shown to him outside the courtroom, and it comes down to their stance on Palestine. The band itself, they've used their platform to raise that issue, and that has in itself brought both support and condemnation.
Yes, can you give us perhaps go a step back and then tell us what this case is about against Mo Chara, this terror charge that he's hoping to throw out?
Yeah, this charge, it relates to an incident in November 2024 at a gig in Kentish Town in London. It's alleged that Liam O'Gohany is Mo Chara's real name. Mo Chara translates as my friend, that's his stage name. But he's charged with displaying support for a proscribed organisation, which in this case is Hezbollah, and it relates back to an alleged incident at a gig where there was a Hezbollah flag involved. This is the second court appearance this week. The first was back in June. The second appearance was more lengthy. There was a couple of hours in this appearance, but essentially the legal argument is that Mo Chara's defence, he says that the charge was issued not within the correct amount of time. Their defence claims that there is a day's discrepancy in the charge. They said it was too late, and that therefore the case should be thrown out. So there were lengthy legal arguments in the courtroom yesterday. The courtroom was packed. Again, outside we saw a huge demonstration of support for Mr. Rouhani outside the courthouse. Many had travelled from Belfast to give that support, but there were also many people within London who did that as well. So the case has been adjourned. The judge has said he will make a judgment on September 26th. So I imagine the same level of support and the same level of protest will be outside the courtroom on that date.
Yes. And just finally, Liam, from Dublin to Belfast, for those who do support the Palestinian cause, do they feel vindicated by what they've seen recently, particularly, countries like Australia and France going to recognize the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly next month?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I mean, people here have been saying that for quite a long time. I suppose it does maybe embolden or strengthen the protests in favour of Palestine when they do get that kind of support coming from other parts of the world. There maybe was a sense that they were maybe ploughing a lonely furrow at one point, but at this time you can see the international support starting to grow, and they will say there's more people speaking out. But again, with that intensification comes the opposite end of things, where you have that surge in support for Israel too. So one goes hand in hand with the other.
Okay, Liam Tunney in Belfast, really good to chat with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.